can just grab everybody's attention, please. So if you just came in the door and you haven't had a chance to get some coffee or donuts yet, we have some delicious coffee and some wonderful, amazing donuts over there from Ohana Donuttery. So if you haven't had a chance to grab one yet, please do. They're super delicious looking. I'm trying to decide which one I'm going to get after this. It's a very difficult mental battle. So if we have not met before, my name is Courtney. I work here in the Student Services Office. I'm the student recruiter / financial advisor. Obviously, it's a big financial advisor hat that I'm here chatting with you today. So I won't waste too much time on chatting here. So I will pass things over. We have two representatives from the Registrar's Office from the Student Financial Support Office here to give you some great information that has great financial information, that has been tailored specifically for law students. So I will pass things over here to Trent and Cindy. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, yeah. So my name is Sydney. I work in Student Financial Support with Trent. I'm a financial aid coordinator, so I do a little bit of most everything in our office.
Yeah, my name is Trent. I'm the Student Engagement and Outreach Coordinator in Student Financial Support. So if you've ever heard of Money Talks or come to one of our Money Talk sessions, I'm the one that runs all those, and I work with students and help them figure out how they're going to pay for their schooling and fund the rest of their degrees while they're here. Have all of you heard of Student Financial Support before? Yeah, okay, just in case you haven't, a couple of things that we do. So we're responsible for the administration of scholarships and awards for undergraduate degree programs. We also do government student loan advocacy and advising. So if you're applying for government student loans or having some issues with your loan provider, you can always come see us and we'll help you figure out those issues and solve them. We also are responsible for the supplementary bursary program, which I'm sure most of you are aware of and are probably wondering what the delay is all about. But we're working on it, and then we also do emergency funding. So if you ever find yourself in need of some immediate funding, we do offer students interest-free loans just on the
short-term basis.
Yeah, short-term basis, just have to show that you can pay it back within a reasonable amount of time. And then we also do financial literacy programming as well. Unfortunately, this video isn't working, so we'll just have to skip this part. The handouts that you have on your desk in front of you there, we won't be using them today. They're just kind of an extra resource that you can use later on to help you track your expenses or look into budgeting more specifically. Throughout the presentation, I don't think there's anything you're going to be like, whoa, this is really useful information, but I think it's more of a time for you to sit back, reflect on how you're currently spending your money and see the repercussions that it can have down the road. So, and if you have any questions throughout, please feel free to ask. So I'll let you go ahead.
So first we're going to talk a little bit about loans and credit. So as law students, you guys have access to a lot of resources, especially credit resources. So you would have access to about $125,000 in student loan funding. And then also about $125,000 in student line of credit funding. And then credit cards, which as we all know can kind of vary with those limits. So you could potentially end up finishing your law degree with up to $250,000 worth of debt, which is a lot. So the estimated academic cost for a law degree at the University of Alberta is around $40,271. So this includes your tuition, fees, books, and supplies, but it does not include living expenses. So living expenses would be on top of that. Okay, so what are reasonable living expenses? We want you to live like a student now so that you don't have to later. If you live with a roommate, a typical average cost for renting somewhere with a roommate is around $632 a month, whereas living alone can run you around, on average, $914 a month. So that's a $282 a month difference, which at first might not seem like a ton, but when you add it up over the course of your degree, it can come to about $10,000 of difference. And if you're not working during that time and you're living off of line of credit and student loans and credit cards, you're just basically adding $10,000 more to your debt once you're done your degree. Sorry. thought I heard too big a sound. Okay. So law school is very busy. Taking time to cook can be difficult for lots of students, for most students, especially with the convenience of all the food that you have available here on campus. So a single student, a reasonable amount for a single student to spend on food in a month is probably around $250 to $350 per month. That includes personal care, so toiletries, things like that. In comparison, a student who rarely cooks and eats out a lot can actually spend up to $1,000 per month eating out, and a lot of the times the problem is you don't even realize you're doing it. So you're just, tap, 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 tap all over the place, and then if you're not really going back over your statements, you might not even notice that you're doing it. We see a lot of students who come in for bursary appointments, and we have to sometimes sit them down and say, hey, have you looked at your bank statements lately? Because you tapped your debit card on food or drink products 10 times in one day. So just something to kind of think about.
And I'll just interrupt for 1 second, sorry. For those of you that are on Alberta student loans, do any of you know what the living allowance is per month on your loans provided by the government? Anyone have a guess? Someone shout out a number, please.
Anything?
500.
Living allowance, so rent,
Food,
Oh, all those items.
yeah,
everything, yeah. So everything,
2,000. So you would think, hopefully it's around 2,000. So it's actually, the maximum they'll give you is just over $1,100 per month, and that's your living allowance. So we often see a lot of students that have spent their entire living allowance on eating out, and rent hasn't even been paid for the month. So just something to think about when you are budgeting and looking at your rent costs and food and whatnot.
and also just something to be aware of if you were planning on potentially getting through the year just on student loans, it probably won't work out that way. Okay, so more about food. So choosing to cook and avoiding to eat out can really help save you an additional $23,000 over the course of your 3-year degree. So that's huge. It does take a little bit of effort, planning, things like that, but I mean in the long run it can save you a giant amount of money. So it's totally worth it. When it comes to clothing, there will be several opportunities throughout your time in law school where you'll be expected to dress up and dress nicely, go to functions. So students who frequently purchase brand new clothes for every event that they attend can spend up to $4,000 a year on clothes, shoes, and accessories, compared to students who reuse their favorite outfits and typically spend around $600 per year. So just something to think about, maybe investing in a couple of pieces that you can sort of use multiple times, mix with other stuff, so that, because you don't want to look like you're always wearing the exact same thing, like you have this one outfit, is a good idea. I don't know if anyone here is like a thrift shopper. That's a good idea too. There's lots of really cool things you can find in thrift stores. But over the next 3 years, it can cost you an additional $10,000 if you're spending that higher amount on clothing, even though we know it's important. When it comes to self-care, it is vital that you take the time out to take care of yourself. Law school is really busy. We just think it's really important that you stick to a budget when it comes to that sort of thing. So weekend trips, vacations, spa days, nights out with friends, these can all add up. Over the 3 years, your leisure activities can add up to $12,000 in total, which again is just adding to your debt once you leave here. So the big picture, these seemingly small decisions that don't seem like much at the time can really add up. So if you don't live with a roommate, you choose to live on your own, you could be adding $10,000 to your debt down the line. If you don't meal plan, prep, and tend to eat out a lot, you can add $23,000. If you're not really thrifty with your clothing purchases, you can add another $10,000, and the self-care, going out, having fun, that sort of thing can also add another $12,000. So over the 3 years, it can come to a whopping $55,750 of debt for you in preventable costs. So just one of those reasons why we really suggest that students have a budget, try to stick to it as best they can.
Mm-hmm. So on that note, it is really important that you do stick to a budget and recognize that these decisions you're making right now, because you don't have to pay it back at this time, it kind of seems like it's in the distance, it's later's problem, but there is going to come a time when you won't be able to access more credit. Those student loans you won't have access to anymore. The line of credit can be maxed and you won't qualify for more credit funding in any sort. So just assuming that these preventable costs were purchased on a line of credit, we'll say, and the annual percentage rate was 5.7%. If you were to pay off these preventable costs in 5 years, your minimum monthly payment would be about $1,070 once you graduate from school. So that is a pretty significant amount of your income, and that's only your preventable costs. So that's not including your Alberta loans or other provincial loans, Canada loans.
It doesn't even pay off any of your school debt. That's just the preventable costs.
Exactly, yeah. So assuming, I have no idea what everyone makes or will make, but assuming a student graduates, has all their debts and they're making $50,000 a year right out of school, that $1,070 monthly payment would account for 26% of their gross monthly income, so a very significant amount of that income. Once again, recognizing that that's just the debt payments for preventable costs, not including your tuition and other costs or debts that you'll be paying back as well. Has anyone heard of like the term total debt surface ratio? Anyone? No? Okay, so your total debt service ratio is what lenders use when they're evaluating the risk to give you money, and it should never exceed 40%. If more than 40% of your gross monthly income is going towards paying back debts, then you're looked at as a very high risk to lend to, and it'll be very difficult to qualify for things such as a car loan, mortgage, another credit card, things like that. So when you graduate, if your $1,070 monthly payment for preventable costs is accounting for 26% of your gross monthly income, you have 14% left of your income to pay for all of your other debts. So if you have a car loan, government loans, a mortgage, things like that, you can very quickly exceed 40%. Does that make sense, everyone? Any questions? Kind of shocking? No? Maybe? All right. So that's why it's really important to budget. We often see students that are living very luxurious lifestyles, often spending over $4,000 per month, which is a very extravagant lifestyle, vacationing, things like that, because students do, or not just students, but people in general look at these things and say, well, it's on a line of credit. You didn't really have to work for that money, so it's very easy to just tap those cards and keep spending. But why not save the vacation for when you can actually afford it and don't have to have all your money go to debt payments when you graduate. So when it comes to budgeting, does anyone have a budget first of all? Anyone? 1, 2, 3, 4, nice.
Great.
Do you track your expenses like specifically-ish? Yeah, cool. Does anyone have any idea what they spent on food last month?
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit. You at least all know your rent costs, right? Yeah, awesome. Okay. Anyway, so when it comes to budgeting, there's often a lot of myths regarding budgeting. I think the first one is that they have to be super detailed, and this prevents a lot of people from budgeting. You're already super busy with school and all your other extracurricular activities, so you probably feel like you don't have time to sit down, track your expenses, and all those fun things. But the nice thing is your budget can look however you want. Even a good starting spot would be to download an app like Mint or something, which just tracks where you're spending your money, so you can even just sit down and reflect and see where your money actually went. You just don't have a budget, that's more of a spending analysis, but it would still help you see where your money is going. The next myth that we often see that causes a lot of people to not budget is that you can't go over your budget. Ideally, yeah, you don't want to go over your budget, but there are times when you will have to go over your budget. Sometimes an unexpected expense occurs, like if you have a car breakdown, maybe you have to fly home and see family. You can't always budget for the unexpected, so it is okay if your budget goes over, but don't let it deter you from budgeting next month. Another thing too is that students will often, or I keep saying students because it's students, but it's not just students. If you budget for, like, let's say groceries for $300 a month and entertainment for $200 a month, and you end up spending $250 on entertainment, but only $250 on groceries, you're still living within your budget. You just kind of allocated your expenses differently that month, and it's not really that big of a deal. So if you did go over in one area, just check to see if you were under in another area, and then you're still living within your monthly budget that you've set for yourself. So yeah, don't worry too much about that. Our third one is budgeting is time consuming, which can be true depending on how much detail you want to include in your budget. But you can sit down like once a week and look at your budget and reflect on your spending for that week, or at the end of the month and see how your spending is going. And a few slides will go over like the different budget types, and you can see which budgets work for you and which ones you would want to use, and depending on how much time you want to put into it. Myth 4, budgeting equals deprivation. I think a lot of people look at this way, and budgeting usually has a negative context to it, and that's why everyone tries to avoid it. But essentially, budgets are a tool to help you spend your money appropriately, so you don't have to, you're not doing deprivation later on. Because if you don't budget now and are spending your money, then you're really going to have to budget in a few years when most of your money is going towards debt repayments, and then it will really feel like deprivation. So better to do it now than later. So looking at the different budget types, the first one, has anyone used Mint before or heard of Mint? No, so this is actually, you have you tried it? How did you feel? Did you like it or not really?
Yeah, I think it really, like it definitely sends reminders at least once a day, and if you keep up with it, like it really is a good reminder of like how much you're spending on.
Nice, because I haven't used it personally, but like it'll alert you, correct? If you like go over in an area.
Yeah, like if you say, okay, I only want to spend $100 a month for like fast food, let's say, that you can make a category and it'll try its best to categorize your purchases based on what it sees in your account. And as soon as you go over, they'll definitely send them something be like, you know, watch out, you're close to your limit. Or
cool. Yeah, so yeah, the first one is like visual budget, so things like Mint. It's just an app you can download. The one thing you have to be cautious about, it's a third-party app from your financial institution, so you might want to check with your financial institution to see if you can use it, if you're not going to lose any of those like security issues or whatever. But the nice thing about this one is you can just go into the app, say how much you want to spend in each category, and then once you're approaching that amount, it'll notify you, oh, you've gone over this month, you're $20 away from going over, things like that. Sometimes it will categorize it wrong and you'll just have to go in and change it, but it's a nice reminder to see where your money is going and not time consuming whatsoever, because it does the work for you. Just keep in mind this is more of a spending analysis, not really a budget, because you haven't really set guidelines quite yet on how you want to spend your money. Number 2 is the spreadsheet. So it's a detailed list of actual expenses for each month, and you list every transaction. And it's very comprehensive, so this one would be very time consuming. So if you want to count your pennies, it's good, but for a lot of people this might not work just because of the time constraints and details. But the one nice thing about this one is that you can see your total spending over the academic year, your averages. But once again, more of a spending analysis. We haven't really still set that budget. We're just looking at where our money is going. The next one is just the percentage budget. So the Credit Counseling Society of Canada, as well as the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, so the FCAC, have kind of set these as their budgeting guidelines, which is the 50-20-30 rule. So 50% of your income should be going towards essentials, 20% to financial priorities, and 30% to lifestyle. I think this is a nice thing to have, just because a lot of people, when you make your budget, you're not really sure, well, what's an appropriate amount for me to spend on food? How do I know how much I should be spending on rent and food and entertainment? And this can kind of help break it down for you. Also difficult when you don't really have an income right now and you're living off of a line of credit and loans, but you can kind of decide how much money you want to spend per month living, and then use these budgeting guidelines. So the 50% for essentials would include everything from your rent, food, groceries, like a reasonable amount of food, and clothing, reasonable amount of clothing once again, those fun things. 20% for financial priorities, which you may or may not be doing right now depending on your own individual situation or circumstances, but like looking into the future, about 20% of your income should be going towards, you know, saving for retirement, other savings accounts, paying off those debts and those fun things. And then 30% for lifestyle, so that would be all your entertainment, eating out, going to the movies, any athletic things you like to do, and all those extracurricular activities. Any questions so far? No? Cool. How are we doing for And then our next one
Actually,
is,
sorry, I have a question.
yeah.
Sorry, it took me a minute.
No, no.
So for that, when you are, like I know a lot of people in law school, like you can't really maintain too much week-to-week employment. So if you're working like a small part-time job, but you're also relying on like a line of credit or student loans to kind of get yourself through the year, would you still suggest, like, how would you work with that 50, 20, 30 rule? Would you just assess like how much you're like going to be spending each month and kind of use that as like your income for the month and like split it up that way, or?
Yeah, like what I would do is, so like it's really hard with the line of credit because you have access to so much money. But when I've worked with like other students who don't have access to those large line of credits, we take into consideration how much they're getting for the government student loan, if they have any scholarships, bursary funding, any like family support and things like that. And we take the full amount of money they have over the academic year, divide it by those 8 months, and then look at that as their income, because we know that that's all the money they're going to have access to. If you do have access to like a line of credit worth $125,000, obviously you don't want to divide that over 8 months, right? So you'll have to kind of find that comfortable amount and then break it down that way. Yeah, does that help?
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions?
And like you can find information online, if I'm not incorrect, of what is like a reasonable cost for a single student to live off of. So, because it's hard, it can be very subjective. You know, you might pay $1,200 a month in rent by yourself, and so to you a reasonable amount might be like $2,500 to live off of. Whereas you might want to maybe just see what is kind of considered reasonable, so that you know that you're not going to end up with a ton of debt at the end.
Yeah. So like what I guess we can tell you is, so the Alberta government or Alberta Student Aid allows $1,153 for those living expenses. For the supplementary bursary application, we've upped it to $1,400 as the moderate standard of living. So you can kind of use that as a guideline if you'd like. I mean, I think $1,400 is still very difficult to live off of, I'll be honest, but it helps.
Yeah, it might give you just an idea of like, oh, I should try to stay as close to those numbers as I can for the month, even if it is above that. You know, even if you're living at around $2,000 for the month, you're still as close as you can be. Yeah.
Cool, you're welcome. So example number 4 is a spending plan and budget comparison. So with this one, you've actually set your budget. So just kind of going back to your question, I guess, you would look at all your different sources of income for the month or year, then divide it out, or sorry, we'll just look at it monthly. So you would take what you have access to for the month, each month, and then break it down into your expenses. So now you've actually set your budget, and then you would go in and record your monthly actual on how much you actually spent in those months. Did you really make that much money? Did your parents really give you that much? And then you can see at the end of the semester if you actually stuck with your budget throughout the whole semester and the actual school year. So this is kind of helpful. And we actually have, I'll just bring it up here. Sorry, I should have brought it up beforehand. Oh, it's because I haven't authenticated.
Oh.
But I'll just show you quickly. I know. But we have online a Excel spreadsheet you can actually download if you want. So then you don't have to make one for your budget. No, that's not it. And it's very similar to the budget example number 4 that I just showed you. I can't see them.
Oh, yeah, it's easier to see.
Yeah, so if you just go through, you can say, like, write down how much money you have incoming for each month, and what you actually want to budget out for your expenses, and then it does all the calculations for you automatically. Here, once you input what you've actually spent, it'll tell you if you stayed within your budget and things like that. So it's downloadable through the uab.ca/moneytalks website. You'll have the link, I'm sure, if they are interested. Is that all we have? So that, we kind of got through that very quickly. But essentially what we're here to say is that if you budget now, you can avoid those very high debt payments later. Next week we'll also be having a session on debt repayment and debt repayment strategies and kind of those bigger financial decisions after graduation. So looking at tax-free savings accounts, RRSPs, the pros and cons of renting versus owning, things like that. But if anyone has any questions, we'd love to stick around and answer them. I'll do some final tips. Sorry, I forgot about this slide. The Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, so the FCAC, is where we get a lot of our information from for all of our financial literacy programming on campus. And they actually have a financial toolkit. So if you just Google FCAC toolkit, there's a ton of resources that come up that are really useful. They have also like interesting things like debt payment calculators, credit card selector tools, all this really cool stuff. Another thing I just want to say is that if you do find yourself in a situation where you do need to access a line of credit, it's really important that you shop around. A lot of people just go with the one from their bank that they're originally with, and you can often get a lower interest rate at other institutions, so definitely shop around. I know they have some good ones in mind that they know of. It's also really important that you spend your money on the things that you value most, and if you need help, always ask. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, please shout them out. And I know you had something.
Oh, I was going to say, even if you have questions about other stuff that our office provides, other services, so like bursaries or loans or anything like that, you can feel free to ask us that too.
I just, sorry,
Yeah.
it always takes me a few minutes.
No, that's great.
I was just wondering, in case I haven't heard of Mint before, but just in case that I can't use that one for some reason if it's not with my bank, are there any other apps that you might suggest or that you know of that might do something different or?
There is another one, and it does it, I just can't think of what it's called, but actually depending on the bank you're with, some of the financial institutions are starting to do this on their own too. So if you go into your online banking, you might be able to click around and actually find the same sort of thing. I know like I'm with RBC, and on my online banking at the bottom there's kind of a pie chart on where my money's going and things like that. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I can take in on that one as well. And so again, when we recommend or when we suggest different company options out there for you, things like third-party things, I mean, always have to put that little disclaimer that this is not like the official party line of the University of Alberta. It's just like seeing what's available and what works for you. Personally, I've been using You Need a Budget, which I find is really, really wonderful. If you're a student, you can get 14 months of their software programming for free. But the thing that I like about that one a lot is it's really not so tight on, oh, you overspent this by $50 and everything's crashing and burning around you. It's all about that keeping your budget flexible. So if you overspent in food, okay, cool, you just need to make sure that you transfer some money over from another area. So that one is my personal one that I enjoy using, so it might be worth a check out.
Yeah, and then one other thing I actually will say too, is if you haven't been budgeting, aren't really sure how you spend your money, and you decide to actually go home and make a budget, which would be awesome, and I really recommend you do, there's a really good chance that it's not going to work the first month, that you will go over in one category by a significant amount or be way under if you're really unsure of how you've been spending your money. But just take that as a learning lesson and take the time to actually go back and kind of alter those numbers on your budget, because yeah, chances are it won't work the first month or the second month. But in time, it will, so.
And a good little tip for, I know we were talking about eating out and stuff and like tapping your debit card. A good little tip if you find like you really like getting a coffee in the morning, that's something that you really enjoy, it adds value to your life. It's a good idea to like buy a gift card. So if you really like Starbucks, you buy yourself, you set your budget, your Starbucks budget for the month, buy a gift card for that amount, and once it's gone, it's gone. That's a good way to kind of handle that.
And I mean, at the end of the day, your best budget is going to be the budget that works for you, right? And again, like, yeah, just keep thinking of your budget as a process, something that's going to be constantly changing and evolving as you're moving forward in your life. As Trent was saying, like, if it doesn't work out though, like, don't give up. If you're driving and your car gets a flat tire, you're going to just change the tire, right? You're not just going to stab out your other 3 tires. So try to think about it like that, right? So fix your tire, keep driving, yeah?
I like that. I'm going to steal that. All right. Well, we'll hang out around here for a few minutes, so if you do want to come up and ask any more personal questions or don't want to say in front of the group, please feel free. So, thank you for coming. I know you're all very busy, so we really appreciate it.